In today's episode, I speak with Bruno Carvalho. He's been a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt for 20 years exactly today. He's coached MMA, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has been involved with coaching the likes of Alistair Overeem and Amanda Nunes. He's also fought professional MMA and been the head coach at gyms such as Fairtex in Thailand. Enjoy. So you're in Norway right now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do you have I was having a little look at your Instagram. It seems like you've got an academy out there or something.
Yeah, so my wife is Norwegian and then my kids are Norwegian, so yeah, I stay here a lot.
Okay.
Or yeah, so I have my affiliations around. Since I moved I lived in Sweden first, yeah, with trained with Joaquin and all those guys for quite a while. Then I decided to get out, moved to Thailand, lived in Thailand. But in the meantime, I met my wife, or my current woman, and then yeah, when we got kids, we moved back here. Uh, Spent a lot of time in the U.S. in Florida too, because I have another affiliations there and gym. But because of COVID, we stayed here for a bit, and then I decided to open my own school here, and now I have 6 affiliations. So it's quite busy when I'm here too.
So you have those affiliations sort of like worldwide. Where are they based?
So I have 6 just here in Norway.
Pardon?
I have 6 just here in Norway. So
Oh wow.
those I travel around, yes.
Wow,
And
okay.
then yeah, a lot, yeah, more around, like a
That's,
lot, some in Sweden, and yeah, in the US
mm,
with my family. Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool.
Mm.
How did you find Thailand when you were there?
It was yeah, I love it. So I think I went first time with Alistair in around 2009, 2010, I believe, and it was cool. And then I started going back just for my own training and so yeah, just fun. And I think around 2014 I went to Think West for the first time
Okay.
and had a few friends over there and make good connections. And then a year later, about yeah, like summer of 15, I believe, and then I made the move to be one of the head coaches and one of the coaches at Think West in Chiang Mai. And then yeah, stay there for maybe 2 3 years. Through there I had a student who became the general manager at Fairtex.
Okay.
And when they opened the MMA, when they decided to open the MMA program at Fairtex, uh, they invited me to be the main coach for the jiu-jitsu and MMA.
Mm.
And then I spent another, yeah, first 8 months, then another 2 or 3, and then I kept working with some of the fighters that were already previously my student, like Mark, and then Stamp. I still work sometimes with her.
So you mentioned there Alistair. Is that Alistair Overeem?
Overeem, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
I'm guessing that's how you know Joachim.
yes. Yeah. So we yeah. I was part of the Gbg MMA. I was the jiu-jitsu instructor at Gbg MMA,
Mm.
and then yeah, me and Joaquin. So he teach most of the MMA, and I teach it the grappling. And Alistair come and visit us a lot, and with Akira. And yeah, we started traveling to Holland, help training and yeah, doing our stuff. And then yeah, he invited me to Thailand. That was my first time in Thailand. It was, I think, it was 2009, maybe 2010, something like that.
Mm. So
Way back.
as someone who wants to coach at the level you've coached at and form the connections and have the experiences that you've had, how important would you say, or maybe not important, would you say is traveling around the world?
I think it's very important. Yeah, all the connections. Luckily, again, being there and being invited from Joaquin and Akira back then when they first started with GBGMMA and being part of the coaching team, we had a very strong team and a lot of people came and visit, and that's how we made a lot of connections too. But through my travels again, yeah, I guess again, like if I didn't travel to Chiang Mai and train at Team Quest, I would have not met some of the people I met that end up in the UFC or got me back to be head coach at Fairtex and end up being Stamps coach for most of her MMA career, beginning of MMA at least, until now being an Asian superstar, almost a global superstar, I'd say, because last fight that she had in US, I was there with her, and yeah, it was pretty crazy how big she became now. So I think traveling is the traveling and meeting new people. It's always it's very important, even if you're a fighter or aim to be a coach sometime in the future.
Yeah, it's very easy, isn't it, to get caught up in, especially if you're really invested in a certain gym, to
Yeah,
just train at that gym and go nowhere else. And sometimes you see those instructors that don't like you going to other places as well.
yeah, I think it's weird. I encourage all my guys to go around to or girls and like, I mean, it's the grass is not always greener on the other side. But if you want to go there and you think that is better for you and you want to stay, you it's a pleasure. We work together, and now you do your thing, I do my thing. But luckily, mostly comes back.
That's a sign of a good coach if
Yeah,
regularly come back, isn't it?
yeah,
So I've got a list of questions
yeah.
here. Got about sort of 10 or 11 questions that I'll just go.
Mm.
The first one that I was really curious about is what are the components that you believe make up a black belt? And I don't just mean in terms of skills, it can be personality, um, how you act around the gym, how you hold yourself outside of the gym as well.
Mm. Yeah, it's always a hard question again. Uh, when somebody's asking to get why this guy doesn't get a black belt or why did this guy got a black belt is it's and I learned early that from my uncles that every profession, you have a good doctor and a bad doctor, you have a good teacher and a bad teacher, good lawyer and a bad lawyer. It's but and in the martial arts, especially in judo and jiu-jitsu, where the ones I grew up with, I think the personality and the self-development is what makes a good black belt. Like you got a good character. How you like sometimes what makes you get that next belt or a next level is not comparing who you are to somebody else, but who you are on the first day and where you get now. And I think that commitment of getting 1% better every day is what gets you through, like, to the next level or to the next belt, up to the black belt. Pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. So what would you say is that your sort of ethos throughout each belt in terms of giving the belt is you're not just looking for skills, you're looking for personal development and that kind of thing as well?
Yeah, mostly yes. Like personally, in all ways, like sometimes you get a guy or girl was very shy when they come first to the gym, they're out of shape and they have their ways of doing things, and then you see them getting better and better, and communication skills and life skills and everything. Yeah, that's mostly what I look. of course, there is some part of the skill level is important in a sport where competition is part of it, especially sport jiu-jitsu. If you are not there, like most of my students, clients, whatever you want to call it, here I think we have like 70% of people are like over 35. They're not young, so not everyone really is into competing, but they all do it. It's funny because we don't have a big gym, but we have a big number of competitors, and yeah, that's usually very very nice to see the development of those that are reaching for new things. They coming from all walks of life and just getting better at everything.
So how important do you think belts are?
It's it's a big question. It's again, it's yeah. Well, the other day we were discussing it with some of the guys at the gym. Like, well, back in the day, I think my grandpa used to say, "The belt is just to hold the pants, you know, to get the gi together." Because when I learned a lot from my grandpa, who he was my sensei first and foremost. He still is, but it was only white and black. There was nothing in between, right? When they started in the 50s or 40s. So you either student or you were sensei, you know, that there was no in between. Now you have so many colors in there. I think if you like for the kids and growing up, like kids in general, I mean youngers, helps keeping them like with a view or with a goal of achieving something. So I kind of like the belt system for those, especially for the young ones, because they can be gray and I don't know, yellow, orange, green, so many now. For most of my affiliations, we have a system where the belts is still on, of course, because they again are competitive. But we don't do stripes. I do stripes only for white belts, for example, and then the rest is all the same. And yeah, it doesn't have that, oh, every 3 months or every 4 months you get a stripe and then your next belt in 1 or 2, you know, it doesn't exist. Most of the guys that been with me, they know that, and you get the new belt when we think it's time for the new belt.
Yeah, I think it's got like that visual representation of your progress, and I think that's quite nice.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that our martial arts philosophy is also the hierarchy, right? Like at least when you have the belts, you can put them in line if you want to do lines, and you have the mutual respect of the lower belts for the upper belts, and you have somebody to get questions from, for example. I'd say, like I see all my purples and brown asking question or getting questions from the lower belts all the time, like when they are the ones getting to compete and they are there to help. I was talking to one of my guys these days also because I'm having a seminar next week, and it's like about belt promotion. Like maybe it's important because say I travel a lot, and if I'm not there and everybody's doesn't have a belt, who is leading the class, for example? And I told him like sometimes it's important you get somebody a little higher than the other ones. At least this guy can take care of the class, and no one can get any questions about it. Why is he teaching and not me? You know, like just the hierarchy and representation of a leader in the group when I'm not there or when the teacher is not there. I think that helps with the belt system.
Yeah, Yeah. And one of the things that I always think about with that is like my first day going into a jiu-jitsu gym, I'm kind of clueless about the sport itself.
Yeah.
And say I'm paired with a blue belt or a purple belt, I know that they're going to be able to help me through it a little bit more because
Yes.
I can see visually where they're at.
Mm.
That always, from an outsider's point of view, when you're looking at a class like that and say it's your first day, I think that's also quite a good aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Again, I don't disagree, but I none of our gyms have any like beginners program versus advanced program. I think it doesn't help much when the beginner only train with the beginners. They can't really get much further. I would say like if you're two white belt, if you I started this week and you start next week and we only train together for the next 6 months. I only know this amount of moves and you only know this amount of moves. And when we're trying to get to the next level, like, oh shit, that's all this thing in jiu-jitsu, like, oh, all blue belts quit. Like, well, maybe because you guys decided to divide them in just white belt groups, and when they get a blue belt and they go to the next class, they are not the big fish in the small pond anymore. They are small fish in the big pond, and suddenly they're like, oh shit, it's harder than I thought. It was so easy when I was training with the guys on my same level. So I like again, most of the guys around me, we've been doing the ecological stuff for quite a while, and you pair the beginners with the advanced or whatever it is, and they all train together, and everybody learns how to do their ways from the beginning, from day one.
Yeah, I like that. That's I've never heard of a gym or someone running a gym talk about that before mixing everything together.
Yeah,
I really like that. I can't remember who it was. There was somebody who I was listening to one time. They were talking about you need three training partners.
yeah, that's what I was doing. My point I was getting to the plus minus equal. I actually just ordered. I have a student who get a tattoo, and I was talking to him about it because I also want to have it. So yeah, you probably heard it from the Shamrock stuff.
Maybe I can't remember who it was,
It's
but
yeah, I know it became pretty famous with Cam Shamrock or Frank Shamrock, and yeah, you have somebody who's equal, plus, and minus. So you have the guy who is lower than you that you can beat up and practicing, and then you have somebody who is better than you that helps you get to that next like where you can get your questions and you can have new techniques and ways to do things, and you have somebody who is equal that like you win one day, he wins the other day, and you both grow together. Yeah, I always tell my guys that this is the easiest and the best way to develop. It's having a plus, minus, and equal every day. If you have three guys, if you only have 3 rounds every day, and you have one plus, one minus, and one equal, for sure every day you're getting better.
mm, yeah, which kind of plays into what you're saying there about mixing the class because
Yes,
if you have just a beginner's class, you get just equal.
just equals.
Yeah,
there's, there's no way to add math in that. In that, that is
yeah,
impossible.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a really a smart way to approach it.
Yeah.
Do you consider a jiu-jitsu match a fight?
Mm, yeah, mostly yes. Yeah, I I grew up in that environment again. All my uncles, my mom, they competed since I was born, and yeah, I had my uncle Edson who achieved the an Olympian level in Brazil and won several nationals and international in judo and jiu-jitsu and MMA. Uh, I never thought of getting into a fight or just for fun. I I don't think that's the way the sport is. Like mostly countries around Europe, like oh everybody get a medal. Like here in Norway, Sweden, like oh the kids compete for fun. I'm like I don't like that. I think it's important to learn that some days you win, some days you lose, and that's better for your growth.
Mm.
Yeah.
So,
So
sort of taking it to that question, there's that big debate, isn't there, of is a jiu-jitsu match a fight? Same with a wrestling match. Some people even argue a boxing match as well. Um, do you would you call it a fight, or would you say that no, it's a match?
interesting question, to be honest. Uh, I mean, most of the time, like I have a good friend, Alan Finfo. I don't know if you know. Now he coaches guys like Hamza Chimaev, and we used to train together in Sweden. He always said the same thing. The when the referee says fight, he steps back. So you gotta. It's all up to you. You don't have time to be friendly anymore. So mostly, even if in the jiu-jitsu, most of the referees just say combat or fight or loot, whatever. So it is a fight in many ways.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's definitely an intense thing to go through. You know, whether I don't really think it matters too much whether you call it a fight or whatever, because either way, it's a hard experience, isn't it?
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I It's hard to define it as if it's a match or a fight, but and at what level you can differentiate it too, right?
Mm.
Like a local competition, it might be like, oh, it's just some matches. But when you get into the higher levels and money is involved, then it's a fight.
Mm. It's
So sorry.
more on the line.
Yes, more on the line.
So tell me about your journey within martial arts, sort of from the beginning. Was jiu-jitsu the first martial art you did?
Well, judo pretty much growing up. So yeah, as I said, my grandfather opened his school in 1966. So my mom and all of my four uncles are black belt in judo, and my grandfather initially started with jiu-jitsu in Brazil and did all the no rules fights back in the early 50s, where he's from Ceará. And then from the father lineage, they always talk about the two lineage, the Gracie and the father. So he was from the father lineage, moved to the north of Brazil, and had all the Vale Tudo fights. And then when he moved to the our hometown now, that's Salvador in Bahia, uh, and met the sensei Kazuo Yoshida from Japan, who mostly taught judo. And he got very fascinated about judo and opened his judo school in 66. But he was already a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So we learned our training was always both. Pretty much was a very strong uh, standing and on the ground. Always had half and half since I can remember. But we mostly competed in judo. And then when my uncles started fighting abroad or traveling a lot and training at Carson in Rio and got their black belts through Carson too. And yeah, around 95, I started focusing a lot in jiu-jitsu as well. And then we had team competing in both judo and jiu-jitsu since then.
Yeah. I was it 2004 you got your black belt?
2004, yes.
So that's
20 years in this week.
wow. Oh, really?
27.
Huh?
27 of November 04
That's cool. That's cool.
in 3 days.
Um, So obviously 20 years ago is quite a long time, you know. I'm only
Yeah.
22 myself. So um so obviously for me especially it seems like quite a vast amount of time. But what would you say is the biggest difference you've seen in that 20-year period? So bear in mind you obviously got your black belt in 2004, so you'd already had quite a lot of experience and you'd done judo before that. But in that 20-year period, what would you say is one of the things that you've seen change the most?
100%. The popularity of the sport changed like insanely much, and then it became a lot more professional. But I think the popularity has, again, with a lot of celebrities. I always say Joe Rogan is probably the biggest influencer in jiu-jitsu that has changed jiu-jitsu in so many ways that so many people listen and then they come to the gym to try it. And the the sport of it as itself became, again, it became a sports jiu-jitsu and not just a traditional martial arts way. So you see a lot of new ways of competing or new techniques or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I heard a little bit of the or your interview with Joaquin just to familiarize. And like you said, on the when I first came to Sweden in '06, and that's why I didn't compete much as a black belt. So I started doing MMA more and more. I had my first MMA fight, I think, at 2000. I was already, again, my uncles were already fighting, and I decided that I was gonna fight too. And there was no money there was no money like other than teaching in jiu-jitsu, so we eventually would get fights for extra money, and there was not many competitors or high level or higher belts in Europe or in Sweden, Scandinavia at all. So there was not much competition, and eventually had to do more MMA.
Mm.
And now every small gym has like 10 black belts.
Yeah.
The sport really got popular, and everyone knows it's on TV. It's crazy. And now with the new announcement that the UFC getting involved and making their own league, I think it's gonna take new levels even more now,
I'm surprised they
even
didn't do
higher.
it.
Sorry.
I'm surprised the UFC haven't done what they've done recently before now.
Yes.
I'm shocked it's taken them that long to do this.
Oh yeah, I guess it yeah, Dan White, he has his ways of doing things. Like he said, once the women were never fighting the UFC, and now they have a lot of main events with women's only fights. And I believe he's, of course, success leave cues, and one championship is doing so well with adding grappling matches, fights, or whatever you want to call again. Mostly of fights I've seen there, I've been there, and I guess they don't want to get far behind, So you
Mm.
gotta follow the trend. If it's working somewhere else, why not try it? I
Yeah,
think that's their way of doing this.
yeah. I'd like to see them do uh, kickboxing.
Yeah.
I'd love that. Similar to what One Championship do, where it's all
Yes.
it's all all in one. I'd love that. But what's the taking it back to that question that I asked that sort of led to that? There's something you said there which kind of sparked a question that I wanted to ask you, which was what you've got sports jiu-jitsu, which is very obviously designed for the sport and the rule set. And then you've got the I don't know if this is correct, and I'm sure that you're the person to ask on this. Is I'd always heard that originally jiu-jitsu is a little bit more designed towards self-defense. Is that correct?
Yeah, a
So
lot of it.
how do you feel about the way that sports jiu-jitsu is going and taking the direction of the sport compared to its original roots of being a little bit more focused on defending yourself? Because some of the things that happen in jiu-jitsu, if you were using as a self-defense technique, would probably get you in a fair bit of trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not beautiful, and it depends on what self-defense meta we're looking at. Again, I believe that everything would still be able to use no matter what. Like, again, if you put a 200 pounds, we've seen a lot of videos on YouTube or Instagram or whatever media we have these days. That like, oh, you got a 200 pound guy against one of the meows, and eventually he'll berimbolo or whatever the heck he wants to do, and he'll get to your back and he'll choke the fuck out of you. It doesn't matter. But when it's the original, the part of like defense for knives and those stuff that still having on like aikido and judo katas is still having that. There is the lost part of the sport jiu-jitsu. Um, and but I still think there's room for both. There's a lot of people still interested on that part. Again, if you look at the Valente Brothers gyms in Miami and all over, they're huge. They're big. They have big community. They have lots of students, and there are people looking for that kind of jiu-jitsu still. So it's not that as some people think it is, but the sport jiu-jitsu in a self-defense manner, it's I still think that there is still it is still valuable, but with the rules of the sport changed so much as well, there's no more need of standing up, and then once you're on the ground, I yeah I, there are many old school guys like, you always want the high ground. Why you want to be on the bottom doing some weird stuff. I personally don't like it, but I also don't disagree with whatever the guys wants to do.
Mm. What's your outlook on what you mentioned there with obviously jiu-jitsu match starts, someone pulls guard.
Yeah,
I've genuinely seen black belts that don't know how to do a proper double leg.
not at all.
What's your how important is it for you that say you're giving someone a black belt or whatever that they are able to perform double legs, single legs, a decent level of wrestling.
I think some wrestling or judo. Again, I teach both. I grew up on both. Of course, I competed mostly judo when I grew up. I had my first competition before my 3 year. Again, I'm born in January, and my first competition I was 2 years and 11 months. Was in December before my third year birthday. So I've been competing since 3 years old in judo and jiu-jitsu. Then I transitioned into wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, everything else. I have competed literally in everything. Uh, I again teaching the way I teach and my schools teach is trying to have our overall game. We always do some kind of standing, we always do some kind of guard, and we always do some kind of pinning, controlling. Again, the this ecological stuff. Now we've been doing it even in judo. We did something similar, but yeah, I if somebody's getting to the next level, we always is one of the things we try to, like, how much knowledge you have in every area. I think is important, at least, to know, again, if you get if you are a black belt, you're going back to the plus, minus, and equal. If you can't even teach or know, if you don't even know a proper takedown, and you're getting a white belt that's gonna come in the first day and gonna, oh, this guy's a black belt. Can you teach me how should I do a single leg, and you don't know how to do it? I think it looks a bit weird for the school, or for the teacher, or for the sensei, the master. Like, oh, how the guy is a black belt and he can't even teach how to get somebody to the ground.
Well, that's kind of the thing with jiu-jitsu, isn't it? You get somebody to the floor, you get past their guard, you pin them, and you submit them.
Yes.
You can't do the rest of that if you haven't got that first part.
Yes.
So I think if it seems illogical to not be able to do that first part, if you can't do that, you then can't do the rest of everything else that you're learning.
Very hard. I think would be very hard. Again, yeah, you're gonna have the guys who maybe pull guard and go for leg lock, so you're gonna pull guard and try to sweep. But yeah, I think at least you should know. Again, in a war, you prefer the higher ground, right? You should be able to at least be on top if it's needed.
That's a really cool analogy. In the war, you prefer the higher ground.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you always prefer to be on top? Is that your thing?
I played everything. Yes. Again, I have many injuries, of course, through sports. My last competition was a couple of weeks ago. I play a little bit judo because guys know I'm judo, but yeah, I eventually won by pulling guard and submitting the guys from there. But yeah, I always prefer the takedown and being on top. That usually my game in MMA and everything.
Yeah, I think definitely in MMA.
Yeah,
I always find it's just easier to be on top as well. You use less energy. You're the person in control.
you get the ground and pound, you get everything. You can control so much more.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So as I asked Joachim this question as well, um, as a young coach myself who's coaching at a beginner level,
Also.
but wants to get to the level that people like yourself, Joachim, have coached at, what's a piece of advice that you could give on to me?
Of becoming a good coach, of yeah, I'll be same as becoming a good fighter is consistency and loving what you do. Like, again, I always knew what I wanted to do. Like, sometimes I have disagreement with my wife, or like, maybe she does. I'm like, oh, well, that's what I decided to do, and that's my job, and I love it. So I leave. I literally leave jiu-jitsu nowadays. I spend a lot of time doing, again, MMA. I still coach MMA people at the UFC level. Now I have one of the only female Norwegian is Ivana Petrovic. I train with her on a daily basis, at least a couple of times a week, but mostly grappling. Same with Stamp, unless when we travel around, and then I have to do the whole striking and MMA overall. But because of my associations and affiliations, I decided to focus again in jiu-jitsu and judo, or mostly jiu-jitsu, and that's what I compete mostly nowadays as well. So yeah, I think it's to embrace it, to the consistency, right? The consistency is what makes you better, and live for that. I live for what I do, and I love what I do, and I think if I can do that 24/7, and again striving to get 1% better every day, to be the best version of myself to my students or to my family and to everything, I'm definitely doing my job. And being a young coach as I was once, I think that helped off. Yeah, studying, looking at matches, seeing things, and the way we talked early, traveling around helped me a lot. Learning, I learned so much from Joaquin. I learned so much when I was in Thailand with Dylan and those guys. I was again. I always tell people because I was so lucky that again I fought a lot in Asia, and even when I fought in like Russian, and so it was always I was fighting left-handed southpaw, and I was so lucky to have people like Joaquin always with that I trained so much, and my partner in Thailand, Dylan, who they were both left-handed, and and I learned so much from those guys. I was like, wow, thank thanks that I thank those guys. I can't thank those guys enough for so much insights on learning how to fight southpaw and how to be in a south. I do both stance myself for all the time all the things I learned from them. Yeah, just consistency and loving what you do. I think it takes you places, you know.
Mm. I think a consistent theme for people that I've spoken to is kind of just, first of all, be consistent, obviously.
Yeah,
And another thing that I've picked up, maybe not that they've said necessarily in these exact words, but is just throwing yourself into it like
yeah,
the whole way. Just go all in.
100%. I think I heard a conversation of Greg Jackson say like, not Greg Jackson, sorry, Greg Saunders, who I listen a lot for the ecological. He said once he talked to Danahan, who is a very famous coach for MMA. It's like how you know that what you're doing is right, and he was like, I don't know. I try, and maybe after 6 months, I see that everything went wrong, and I have to go back to zero. But during those 6 months, I try to make that thing work. If it doesn't, then okay, then it doesn't. We forget about it, go back to zero, and try some way, a different way. That reminds me of like Bruce Lee, right? Like get whatever you see, take what is useful for you, and just forget about the rest.
Mm.
Just take that part that fits you or that fits your student's game and try to add it. If it doesn't, then you say, okay, let's do this other way.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So the last question I had for you is, what is one of the standout things that martial arts has done for you or given you?
Stand out, man. I think it's is my life. Like again, like I said, is I have it here. It's I fight to live and I live to fight. Again, I never left Brazil until 2006. I was 20. I turned 24 when I got here. The week I got here, I was turning 24, and I have visited a few states in Brazil only until that age. So yeah, I was a bit. You say you're 22. I was 23, almost 24. And since then, uh, I travel the world, like literally everywhere, and I met so much people, so many interesting people, and from all walks of life. You've been in Thailand yourself. You it's if you had the Hickson Grace book, you say Bangkok is or Rio is a mix of Bangkok and New York. So being in Bangkok is freaking insane. Being in New York was for the first time, and many times after that was insane. being real so many times. It's like, wow, yes, that's exactly how he describes it. But I think, yeah, martial arts gave me again. I met my wife and I have my kids through what I do, uh, and I try to live. Again, I try. Jiu-jitsu is not a part of my life. My life is martial arts. It's the way I live. Is the way I do everything. Uh, it's I know not everybody has the commitment because it's different when I grew up in that environment. A lot of I've had many questions like before my last match. There's a couple of clips on YouTube where I was just trying to relax and breathe, and people like you don't get stressed or you don't get nervous or you just look like it's another day. I always say, like, for me, it's just that I don't know another way. Again, I was born in it. My mom was teaching since I can remember, since I was in her belly. She was already teaching, like before I was born. At my so when my grandpa opened it, as I said, in '66, he built the house, and then we have the gym in the first floor. And as I can remember, the moment that you start walking and you can climb the stairs, you were training at the mat. There's no other way. And all my uncles and all my family was there. So every night was spent at the gym from yeah, since I can remember my life starting. And competition, it was part of it since then, since I was 3 years old. Yeah, martial arts gave me everything. It's literally my life. It sounds a bit corny, but it's literally I don't know what else I would do if it wasn't for mostly jiu-jitsu nowadays, because it became so popular. I thought I would be like, oh, I'm gonna do MMA. After I moved to Sweden, there was no much competition. I still fought a few grappling things here and there. I got second place Europeans in 2007. That was one of my few black belt competitions that I could participate. And then I focused on MMA for so long. And then once I got back to jiu-jitsu, I started winning some competitions again. And then COVID hit. It was a mess for everybody.
I have a theory on why jiu-jitsu became so popular, and I'd like to hear your opinion on it actually as well. Is my theory is that it became so popular because, and I've seen this play out in gyms, people want to, when MMA got very popular due to Conor McGregor around that 2015,
Yes.
2016 time, everybody wanted to start training MMA.
Yeah.
MMA is brutal. MMA is a horrible sport to train.
Yeah. Yes.
And sure, jiu-jitsu is as well, but it's not as brutal. You're
Yeah.
not punched in the face, your head isn't bouncing off the floor. Um, and obviously a big component of MMA is jiu-jitsu,
Yes.
much like boxing, kickboxing, and all of that. But again, you're getting punched and you're getting beaten up
Yeah.
like that. And my thesis is that people started with doing some MMA, and then they found jiu-jitsu through that. And I believe that that's how jiu-jitsu has became so popular.
I have definitely I have one of my best friends and one of my guys in Florida. Is also like he was from the same gym with Joaquin and Gebegeme. Like, oh, I came by and I tried MMA, and then I tried your class, and then I realized, okay, MMA wasn't for me, and now it's like, stick to jiu-jitsu. That's it. I don't wanna get punched and all that was involved with MMA training. So yeah, that's 100%. When I decided to have my first Vale Tudo fight, and again, I always would go back to my grandfather, and I said, yeah, I'm talking to my uncle, like I'm getting a fight. And I always tell this story to some of my guys that say, oh, I want to do MMA. And the first thing was like, he like fake that he was gonna slap me in the face. And I just like had a reaction, and he was like, if you don't like it, you don't even go there. I just want to see your reaction. So because he done it himself, so I had to talk to him. Like if you don't like to get hit on your face, you have no business going in there. I was like, nah, I've been training. I think it's okay. I'm gonna defend myself. It's like, all right, do what you wanna do. But yeah, definitely, jiu-jitsu became as many. There's also, the people say that hugging each other makes your oxytocin and all the hormones coming on, and makes it more enjoyable. What I also believe it is true. Like you make the friendships and the brotherhood that you build in the gym is always super strong. Yeah, for sure.
I've not heard that theory before.
Yeah.
I've not heard that theory before
No.
about the hugging and the oxytocin. It makes sense though.
Yes. So every you again, that's why they say that on the end of every class, everybody's so excited, like, wow, the class was awesome. Sometimes the class wasn't that awesome, but because of all the hugging and all the body connections, and if you create that oxytocin, and makes people enjoying training so much more in jiu-jitsu.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
But I've learned a lot. It's always interesting to listen to people such as you speak.
Oh, thank you.